how's it going? It's Malcolm James. Welcome back to the Tactical Den podcast. In this episode, I'm joined with Sam, owner of Airborne Customs holsters, and I'm really excited for this podcast. It's been a long time coming. We've been discussing it. It's a little bit of a time difference, so it's been hard for us to actually sit down and get it done. But yeah, I'll kind of just open up the floor to you, man. Just a little bit about yourself, who you are, and just kind of like what you're doing right now. Just in
Cool.
general, man. Just a little.
My name's Sam.
I
I'm
guess.
one of the two. My name's Sam. I'm one of the two owners of Airborne Customs. We do Cerakote, laser marking and engraving, and we make holsters and some pouches and other bits and pieces. Before that, my main career was in the Army. I spent 10 years in the Australian Army in the infantry. Got out of there in like 2018 and floated around between a whole bunch of different stuff trying to find something that I wanted to do as much as I wanted to do that. And then just out of it was just dumb luck, hit up a guy I used to go to school with years ago and was like, hey man, I just bought my first rifle, I want to learn about reloading. And he's like, yeah, come over, I'll show you. Did that, and then 6 months later he's like, hey, this guy's selling his business, do you want to come and do stuff with me? And then that evolved into where we are now.
Right. Awesome, dude. So yeah, you said you were in the Army. Obviously you're based in Australia and stuff, but you don't have to go too much into it, but like how was that life for you, like Army life? Like how was that?
It's weird because like there's a lot of I should have asked before we started, am I allowed to swear? Because that's going to be a thing.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, cool.
Dude, go for it.
Yeah, no, the Army was something I wanted to do for like ages when I was a kid, and then I got in there, and it's weird looking back on it because you join for one reason and then you realize you join for different reasons and you stay for other ones. It worked really well for me, like the structure, the clear indication of like, these are the things you need to do to be considered a good dude, and you can be like the weirdest dude on the planet, but if you're good at the job, it's like, yeah, he's a weirdo, but he's our weirdo. And the same if like you're an asshole.
Right.
That was great. There's
Right.
A lot of you got to swallow a lot of like shit, like just bad tasks where you're just like, oh my god. Like I think 80% of my career was spent waiting for something else to happen. Yeah, but you get to do.
Right.
You have to do a bunch of cool stuff, and you don't realize until you've left, like all of the things that the intangible things that you get in that job that you can't take with you. You don't realize how much you value those things until you're already out and you don't have them anymore, and then you try and find them in other places if they're important to you.
Right. I mean, that's something that a lot of veterans struggle with too, is getting out of the military and then finding something in the civilian world that will match whatever they've done for so many years or whatever they've learned. And it's challenging. It is a challenge. And some people just never fully recover from that. And dude, it is a challenge. Like, that's all I can really say, dude. It's
I mean, like hard. there's I guess there's two. One is like just the
man. Yeah, go ahead.
The skill set. It depends like what your job is, right? Like if you've got a trade, you're an electrician, a diesel mechanic, something like that, you can take that with you. But if your job is focused around combat, there's not a lot of that you can take with you. So you have to have other skills, build new skills. But the intangible stuff, rather than like going into it too deeply, if anyone wants to understand what that's like, whether you're not one of those people and you just would like to know, or you are one of those people and you want someone to give you the insight that you haven't discovered for yourself yet, I'd go and watch Tyler Gray on Sean Ryan's podcast. It is outstanding, and he's really insightful.
Okay. Right on, man. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, I love the Sean Ryan show. I've been a long time listener to that. I haven't gotten through all the episodes.
Yes,
a few. They're relatively long, and I typically do it if I'm working or if I'm working out, doing something like that. I'll take a listen to it, just because they're really good shows. Like you said, there's some good insight in those. But yeah, man, So we can move on from that. Kind of just talking a little bit more on like hobbies you have growing up, and also just now, man. Like, what do you do for fun and stuff? Because I mean, obviously, we're getting a little away from the military side, going into kind of what you do for fun, and then we'll go into the business and whatnot.
I mean, when I was a kid, like social stuff was it never really like engaged me particularly. Like I was into I like reading kind of. I really liked film. The first thing I wanted to do was like go to school and study film. But then talking to other people, I wanted to do the army thing at the same time. They're like, look, man, the film thing will be there later if you want to do it. It's a lot easier to do the army thing while you're young and your body can sort of recover and tolerate it a bit better. So if that's something you want to do that first. But yeah, I mean, film, watching films, doing a bit of writing and that sort of stuff, and some reading and video games.
Video games.
At least,
Yeah, there
yeah.
it is, man. I mean,
At least before
who
the
doesn't
army.
like a good little video game? You know what I mean? Like,
I struggle to find ones I enjoy now.
yeah.
It's hard. One I have been getting into is it's a bit nerdy. Is Empires of the Undergrowth. It's like a colony sim except it's ants, and
Okay.
it's surprisingly fun.
Right.
Not what I expected. But
Yeah,
as
like
for
probably
hobbies
like
now, man,
put together a little bit. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, hobbies now. I mean, it's weird, man. Like I'm either interested, like if I'm interested in something, it becomes a hobby. And now I'm in like a weirdly fortunate position where uh, all of the interests I have that are sort of hobbies as well, I guess. I either get paid to do them or they're tax deductible. So like I enjoy shooting. I enjoy the process of like designing holsters and that sort of stuff. And it doesn't happen. It's not like the only thing I do is get into CAD software and design holsters. I'll like spend a day designing one, and then it'll be a few weeks before I get to do it again. So I don't get like that burnout. It's nice being able to bounce around between making
right.
stuff and solving design problems, and doing some shooting when I can afford it, because ammo is brutally expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, so I mean, pretty much all your hobbies kind of come together to one thing of like, kind of if it's productive, I can use it for work, or I can do pretty much anything with it. Those are kind of now what's transformed into your hobbies.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'm kind of the same way, man. Like, I typically don't do anything outside of work unless it correlates to work, and even the things that I enjoy now are work related anyway. Just because it's one of those things where it's easier for me to focus on one thing, and I find more enjoyment just focusing on one thing and getting better at one thing. So I'm a little bit of the same way in that sense of everything kind of just comes full circle into what I do.
Yeah, like if you can get
So I mean,
yourself in
I
that
guess
position, it's
I'm
fortunate.
kind
I
of the
mean,
same
some
boat there,
people
man.
just, have, I don't know, they sit in front of the couch and watch TV or something like that. I can't do it. I have to be doing something. Like if I'm doing that, I'm
Right.
probably prepping a holster mold at the same time, because it just doesn't hold my attention enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even do the same. Where if I'm sitting down, I want to do something productive, or even if I'm not doing something productive, I'll sit there and I'll think to myself, "Wow, I'm being lazy. I probably
Yeah,
go do something with my life
exactly.
instead of just sitting here." You know what I mean? And that's something that I've noticed more of a trend of recently. Is I've been having a hard time with finding more things to get done on a daily basis. I used to have this whole schedule where I would record something, I would work out, I'd go to work and stuff. And dude, for some reason, just it might just be summer's almost over, so now I'm trying to my brain's overloaded, um, or just people are moving around, so I can't get together with people. But I found that I'm having more time just to sit, and I hate it. I hate it so
Yeah,
much. Like winter's
yeah,
coming. I have plenty of time to sit down indoors, but I want to actually be doing stuff. Um, because I mean, here in the states, on the East Coast, it's like winter is brutal. You're not going to be doing anything, on the north side. You're not
yeah.
going to
The
do much.
winters here are Like I've seen it over there. Like I remember the snowstorms and stuff you guys had, whatever it was last year or the year before or something, and they were pretty brutal. But I kind of dig the
Yeah,
cold, man. I don't like the heat.
yeah.
Um, so it's yeah. And most
That's
of my hobbies are things I do on my own, so it's not a
I
big
mean,
deal if it's like, oh, I can't go outside and hang out with other people. Like,
that's
great,
true.
but yeah, it's hard to
Yeah,
juggle it.
I mean, if you've seen the YouTube and everything like that, yeah, if you've seen the YouTube or anything like that, I'm usually with a group, like a sizable group, and I'm doing things with them and stuff. And dude, I can 100% like entertain myself, but like just like doing stuff with guns, gear, and training or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm that person where I've slowly become more of an extrovert as I've started to expand. And also, dude, in the military, the way that we have it, it's kind of hard to be an introvert in the military. It, it's
Oh yeah.
very For me, I found it very difficult because you're with someone all the time, talking to people. You're doing weird things. You're put in uncomfortable situations with people where you're out for a couple days just with a bunch of group of guys, and you're like, I can't just sit by myself. I gotta make fun and talk with these guys and stuff.
Yeah, well, you get bored, and then like you've got nothing else to do. Suddenly, uh, it's 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 interesting the stuff people find enjoyment in when they live, I guess, like a more stoic lifestyle. Like you don't have access to the internet, you don't have, hot water or something like that. And, I think people would be shocked at some of the games that guys come up with. Um, yeah, when they're bored in those environments. But I mean, the becoming more extroverted things,
I know,
I
right?
find it's interesting if you're an introvert, and I'm an introvert, and if you're in a group of people and you're there because it's something you're interested in, suddenly you don't look like an introvert anymore because you're interested in the subject and the people give you an opportunity to sort of engage that interest,
Right.
and it's not as
That's
taxing
true.
anymore.
Right. Yeah, I've honestly never thought of it that way, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something that more people would not think of, especially people that are introverts. Like if they're put in a situation, like you said, they're put in a situation where it's something they're interested in, they have an opportunity to expand and talk to people. So I mean, right there, dude, if you're an introvert, go find something that you're good at, something that you like doing, find a group, and then there you go. There's your friend group. You don't have to worry
Yeah, I mean,
about
I sort of joke
not
with
fitting in
people
or
that
something.
shooting's like an accessory sport for people that don't like other people, but it's full of people like that, and you find like other weird people like yourself, or doesn't you might be there in a club with like 40 or 50 other people, and you get along really well with five of them, and that's cool.
Right. I mean, I found it. Oh, it's almost hard to find people that you don't get along with when you go shooting with a group of people. There's some people that might be like a little bit less of your style or your type of like hanging out with, but I've often found that I usually get along with everybody. I've been to USPSA matches and everyone there I get along with. We're all just there to shoot. We all like the same sport. We're all there to do something, and we're just there to get better at it. So it doesn't really matter. We're not really judging anyone else. We're just there to hang out. And I found that everyone there gets along. It's hard to find someone that you don't like it with.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And again, dude, I love shooting, man. I love shooting. That's something that I could do for hours every day. Like you said, ammo's expensive, man.
Yeah,
It's one of the downsides to shooting, just how expensive it is.
yeah,
All that money goes
yeah.
down the drain.
Getting it's interesting how it's. I'm interested to see if the price problem doesn't get better over the next few years. What else is going to come out technology-wise for dry fire practice? Like you've got the Mantis stuff, which is quite popular, and there's other like bits and pieces. But it'd be interesting to see, you know, what people come up with to practice without having to, buy a few boxes to go to the range and all that sort of stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, because looking at alternatives, like you said, you got the Mantis, you got Airsoft, you've got sim rounds, but sim rounds for the civilian populace is near impossible to get. Even blanks, man, blanks aren't giving you as much response because you're not. It's giving you probably as much response as if you were to just regular dry fire on your own. You're just getting recoil response. You're not getting accuracy response. You're not getting hit response or anything like that. You're just getting that recoil response.
I mean, even
So it
like,
would be
especially if you're
interesting
using
to
a
see what they
pistol,
have in the future. I know that there's
like anything that's direct blowback
pistols
is
are
gonna
something else.
create problems with blanks.
That's and honestly, because I mean, if you have like your rifle or anything like that, you're usually getting a blank firing adapter for it, and you need to put that on so it has enough gas
Yeah.
to actually cycle the weapon and stuff. And people, again, that's more money. You can't shoot that indoors because I mean, people are still going to hear the sound of a gunshot. It's going to be like, oh, what's that? And they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
So you can't do that, and it's just again money spending on that, and you got to clean it all up, and then still getting your weapon dirty, so it's not convenient.
Oh yeah.
And again,
More dirty.
with dry firing, it's like nasty. We had someone in my unit that didn't clean their gun for like 4 years, and they had shot blanks consistently because that's what we're doing for training. They had shot blanks, and they had never cleaned it, and they took their bolt out, and the bolt got stuck in the gun because of how much carbon buildup was in there. They banged it on the table, and a bunch of chunks of carbon came out. Nasty.
Yeah.
Nasty.
It's probably helping him with like his blowback,
and they still work. I mean, hey, I mean they're combat gas, so I mean they're wicked over gas. So I mean they're still kicking, but like you saw that and you're like, okay, your O-ring's gotta get replaced. Your entire your entire blade has to get replaced. Like everything's broken on this gun. Nothing works anymore. And that was an interesting time, like watching him clean that. But dude, if you look at regular dry fire, I don't get the whole thing of racking it builds bad habits, because if you're mentally thinking, okay, I'm just doing trigger reset, that's one thing. I don't get the whole thing of you rack it, therefore in real life you're gonna shoot it and then rack it. I don't get that. I've never had that, and I dry fire quite often. But there has to be, even the Mantis, man, like with that, it's just trigger reset. That's it. That's all it's training for you. So there's downfalls to everything.
Yeah, man, it's all trade-offs.
What do you think that they might come up with in the future? You know what I mean? Like,
I'd be interested. I mean, you've already got like airsoft. So you've got airsoft and you've got like gas blowback airsoft guns. I would be really interested to see whether they can use like combine that with something like that with the Mantis, where it's collecting data and giving you feedback, and you've got compressed air somewhere in the system that is getting you, allowing you to train the things that otherwise you're going to need live rounds for. Like, if it's a pistol, is your grip sufficient to get you back on target once the recoil cycle is complete, which you can't do with dry fire. I have no idea how someone would do that, and if it's even like feasible without essentially like putting a gas tank on a existing firearm. But that would be a lot more accessible, and I think people would get a lot more. It'd get them a lot closer to the training they would be able to do at the range with live ammunition. Because first shot you break is fine, but if you're firing a double tap, and your grip means that the firearm moves after that first shot, like the grip isn't sufficient to like hold the weapon and return it to that same aiming point, then you got problems. But you got to shoot live rounds to do that.
I mean, have you ever? So we use this thing, we call it a FATS gun. It's an airsoft gun that they've put a laser unit in, and when you pull the trigger, it still does the same thing an airsoft gun would do. It blows back, gives you some recoil and stuff. Not a lot, but it gives you just enough to actually make sure you need to grip it. And it shoots a little laser out of it. And so it's a target and the gun itself. So it'll tell you where you're hitting. We usually use it for our stress vests, which are these little vests that you put on, and if you get shot, it'll electrocute you. They suck. And so we usually use those, and it gives you some response. You need to make sure that you're actually hitting that person, and they will get electrocuted. So there's little targets, like little can targets that you can shoot, and if you're not gripping it right, it'll tell you, and you can actually see it. So it's a little bit better, but again, it's the same thing where it feels like an airsoft gun. It shoots like an airsoft gun. It just has that little bit of blowback. So if you could like amp up that blowback, it would almost be a perfect system for dry fire.
I haven't heard of it. I'm kind of keen to check it out, though.
You're kind of right, and I haven't seen them anywhere else. It's just something that I use for training with my unit. It's just something that we've been. Hey, it's like, hey, get the fast gun, cool, grab it, and then put CO2 in it. It works just like an airsoft gun. It's a modified airsoft gun. a lot of the stuff that they use for laser training is airsoft guns that have been modified. Like KWA is a good airsoft gas blowback rifle brand, and they have M4 that are made by KWA that they put the laser systems in, and we'll use those and stuff. So I think that stuff's really cool. I think airsoft. I think people give airsoft a bad rep before they've tried it and realize the training aids that it actually has. And I've said it a lot. I think that there's a difference between like having airsoft be an end all be all training aid and having it be a training aid. It is a training aid.
Yeah.
It's like dry fire's a training aid. You need to combine both of them to make a good outcome. And people just blow past airsoft like it's just dumb little kids thing. Like, same thing.
Yeah, you need to know the limitations of what it is.
Take tactics and paintball. Right. Exactly.
I mean, like paintball as an example.
Tactics, taking the guns. Yeah.
I mean, paintball. I remember I got invited to someone's birthday party right after I finished my first promotion course, and that ends with 2 different field phases. One like actual patrol base, and the other one's like more of like a forward operating base in an urban environment. And within days of finishing that, I'm not even sure if I'd finished yet, but it was after doing that part of it. So you've just gone through this whole like leading people in attacks and that sort of stuff, and I go down there and do this paintball thing for this person's birthday, and it was I didn't realize how useful it actually was until like we got there, and we were like, so we'd look at the terrain and we'd be like, oh, we can actually like draw these guys into an ambush here and just have like a couple of people initiate contact, and but the thing is, because the paintball gives you like an emotional response, especially if it hits you and you're like, holy fuck, that hurts. People get tunnel vision, and they're focusing on those 2 people who initiate the contact and not seeing the extended line of people lying on the ground in the bushes waiting for you to come up and just light you up. And you can use, you can within certain, there's obviously certain limitations because you know that at the end of it you get to go home.
Right.
But you can practice fire and maneuver with that sort of stuff because there's consequences, and it's like that with simunition is just that 100%. At a higher level. And if you really want to make that impactful, put your ammo in the freezer the night before.
Yeah. Tell everyone, okay, look, it's gonna hurt way more. And I tell people this all the time. People are like, paintball can't be good training, airsoft can't be good training. And I tell them, I say, the military, the best training that they do use when it comes to actual getting like responses, like an actual physical response, is simunition. And simunition is paintball. They're little paint, little tips that they put on cartridges that just expand in your rifle to eject. There's a little bit of powder in there, but it's not much. It's just enough to make it so it expands. It's the expansion of the actual casing that sends the bolt to the rear, not the actual explosion itself. And you're only going like 50 meters with a sim round. They do not go far at all. They shoot and they drop off because they're heavy too. And so people are like, oh, like you can't use paintball, you can't use airsoft as good training aids. And then half the time too, we're also using blanks, and blanks don't shoot anything. So we're not even getting that physical response or that emotional response if I'm getting shot at right now, which is another reason why I will take using sim rounds, I will take using airsoft, I'll take using paintball over using stress vests or blanks any day, because I want that response of my body needs to be able to flinch, my body needs to be able to know I'm getting shot at and be able to cover myself the way I need to be covered using cover and concealment, be able to move without actually getting shot.
Well, you get the sensation of something coming past you or coming near you, or like the shock of someone's moved up in your position. You don't think there's anyone near you, and you're just dicking around, and suddenly the dude next to you is like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" And then like panic sets in, and you see it spread among people. It's not that it's. I guess people, if people hear someone say simunition's good training, paintball's good training, if they hear that as it's the only training you need to do, then that's a them problem. It has applications, but it's not going to solve all of your problems. If you know what it's solving and you use it for that, knowing the limitations, then you're like, we can plan for those limitations and try and compensate for them with other training. But actually having something shot at you,
Exactly.
People are
Exactly.
shocked how tired they get.
Yes. Yeah. Because it not only like you said, it's the emotional response too. You hear that one round whiz past your head, which has happened multiple times to me, and the second it whizzes past my head, it's a game changer. It's like, fuck, like I got to get
Yeah, yeah.
down now because now I'm
And your
actually getting
body
shot at and
reacts
taking
before
effective
you
fire.
have a chance to get
And
panicked.
exactly,
Like the flinch
especially if you
response
have
you
good
talked about.
training too, which again comes back into the training thing. Right, flinch response, and then that leads into now it's I don't have to think about it. Like it's like a flinch response. That flinch response leads into me dropping. Like I get shot,
Mm.
drop, or I get shot at. It's immediate drop, and then immediately getting on and shooting back. Like return fire, get effective fire down range before anyone moves. Because if you start getting shot at, and the first thing you do is run away, you're gonna all get fucked. But you need to be able to drop, return fire, and then move and get them down. And that's something that you can train in airsoft. That's something you can train in paintball. That's something that you can't just, oh, I know how to do it on paper, therefore I don't need to go train it. No, you need to get in and train it. And again, same thing. You need to also know how to shoot a real gun. So go to the range and shoot your guns on the flat range. Maybe do a little bit of USPSA moving around and shooting. Because again, USPSA is a game. It's not combat shooting, but you need to know how to
Yeah.
move and shoot. So being able to do that and then maybe bring that experience into an airsoft field, like you said, knowing the limitations, it's such a good way to get both and balance it out, shooting real guns and then actual tactics, to being able to bring them together and have an effective training simulation just using airsoft or paintball. People overlook
Yeah.
that.
I mean, like you mentioned like USPSA. I don't know. I've seen. It seems like there's starting to be a shift within the military of adopting certain aspects of just pure competition, individual competition shooting. And guys like, oh, it's not realistic. It's like, no, you're missing the point. The best shooters on the planet are civilians. But you put them in a team environment, you add all the other skills they have to have, like camouflage, concealment, knowing how to patrol, knowing how to communicate, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, now I don't have time to be the best shooter on the planet. So how do I manage my limited resources and, take what I can from those guys, which is like, look, the guys who are like grandmaster level dudes, just go to them and be like, what makes you so good? Can you give me some of that? Because they've already gone and done all the experimentation and getting things wrong for so long until they figure out how to get it right. You don't have to be as good as them, but you can take their skills so that you can get better faster without having to take all that time away from the other skills that you need to have.
Exactly. Right, 100%. And that's something that I found when I was also at my USPSA match, one I did a couple months ago. I was like, I was using a duty rig because in order for me to carry like the weapon setup that I had with like a leg strap for my holster, I need to classify under military, and that's my duty setup. And everyone else had a competition gun. Everyone else had like really nice setup, SIGs, staccatos, whatever, right? And I was running a PSA dagger, like the cheapest handgun that's reliable that you can buy. It was like $300. I was running that. It's a Glock 19 clone. I had a flashlight and a Hollow Sun red dot on it, like for carry. Like that's my carry gun. And I go up to a USPSA match, and I was below, like just like milliseconds slower. And like my hit factor was like 0.05 difference from a lot of the other people that were there. And it's because I'm able to go train shooting, like I shoot on my own time, and I'm not like, hey, I need to have this really sexy gun or something. I'm a competent shooter. I know how to shoot. I just don't have all these special guns, and I'm not treating it like it's 100% a game. I'm trying to get as much training value as I can out of it. And on top of that, it was my first match, and I think I did okay with it. And I want to go again and learn how to shoot more, get more information from these guys on how are you cutting off an entire half a second on your build drill? How are you doing it? It's from my draw. My draw is way faster because I'm not taking the time to meet up both hands and push. I'm pushing with my first hand and my second hand meets. Stuff like that. Like that's still useful. Like that's so
Oh
useful
God,
even
yeah.
in a competition, like even in a combat environment on how to draw from the holster. So it's like I used to come up, my hands used to meet, and then I used to push. Now it's like, no, you want to come up and push. And as you're pushing, your second hand meets it, and it's so much faster. Like stuff like that. It's crazy. And you can learn that from competition shooters.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like
Knowing the difference,
what is it
playing it
you're
right when it
trying to be
matters.
good at? Are you trying to be like the best shooter on a flat range within the limitations of a sport that's predictable? Or are you trying to be the best shooter you can with limited opportunity to do it and not like an infinite budget and bucket of ammo, like, maybe a tier 1 guy or something like that, in which case, going, well, I have one stance for everything I shoot, and it just so happens to be the one that puts my plates towards the target. And unexpected benefit of that is that I have way better rotation left and right rather than left or right. And where my left hand goes when I'm like clamping on the front of an AR just happens to be the exact position that my right hand comes to when I'm shooting a pistol, because I don't have time to train all of these things as if they're separate skills. I need to find a way to get the most bang for my buck, because I don't have time to be that much of a specialist in one thing, because I've got all these other skills I have to be competent at the same time.
Right. Right. And that comes down to like what you're saying. I don't have time to train all these different skills, and that's exactly the way it is for me too. Like when I go to the range, man, I don't take more than 100 rounds. I mean, that's not very much, but when I'm at the range, I try to get as much as I can from that. Like I'm talking like 1-ups, and I'm talking like when I first get to the range, that's when I do my build drill. As I get to the range, cold start, build drill with a pistol, because that's what I'm gonna have to do in real life if I need to actually do a self-defense thing, and then I do it with my rifle, because if I need to engage them with my rifle or something like that. Working in the law enforcement side of things, it's usually going to be up close and personal, like hey, boom, 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 boom. But then looking at the military side of it, then I go right into shooting at distance. I go into getting prone and getting a lethal shot on target with under 10 seconds and stuff like that. Like I don't have a lot of ammo, but I train the really important things. That way, when I go out and I'm doing other things like airsoft, I focus on my movements, I focus on the tactics side of it. And then when I'm at the flat range, I focus on actually getting shots, lethal shots on target. And then when I'm out in the woods doing like my rucks and stuff like that with my airsoft and whatnot, I'm making sure that I'm shooting the exact same way so I can translate it back over to my firearm.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man.
Full balance. People just overlook it. And I'll touch on this subject really, really quick. But when it comes to like training and stuff like that with airsoft and the civilian side, I just ran recently a night mill sim where I told people that were coming, this is what you need to bring. I did a bag drag. You need to bring a ruck. You need to bring all this different kind of stuff. This much ammo, this much water, whatever. We're going to be out there for 12 hours, just all overnight. You guys need to make sure that you have enough stuff and you guys prepared. So people showed up prepared. We were out there all night with airsoft guns shooting at each other. I have night vision. My team has night vision. We all have night vision. So we're doing airsoft with night vision, treating it like it's real, doing like actual maneuvers on people, and it works. It really works. And people that say it doesn't, they've never gone out and they've never done that, because it works. It really does. We got really close to this group of individuals that were out doing like a little recon mission. They don't have nods, so we walked right up on them, we set up an L-shaped ambush, and immediately ambushed them. Immediately popped smoke when it was time for my other guys to run through. They ran through. We annihilated them, searched them, got their maps, got their ammo, got their radios, and all that. And then we continued to push through, secure objectives. And it was a lot of fun, but also a lot of good training that people just overlook when they think about airsoft as a training aid. They don't look at it that way. If you make airsoft good, like as a good training aid, if you make it that way, you can do it. Like you said, it was a birthday party that you went to, but then you used real tactics in it and made it good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, what you're
like
describing,
like
what you've just described, it sounds like the vast. I mean, it's kind of what we're talking about. The vast majority of shooting is a really small part of the job. It's not an unimportant part of the job, but all of the other skills you have, your field craft, is designed to get you into a position to do the shooting or do the observation or whatever it is. And guns are just a tool that either allow you to finish that job, or, if you're practicing like recce or something like that, to give you an opportunity to get the fuck out if you get bumped. But yeah, the vast majority of those skills are not about shooting. But you need to have that skill when it matters.
Right. And then, like you said, the vast majority is not about shooting. And the reason I like that too, and the reason it's true, is like you said, everything that you're doing is to get to that point where you can shoot, which is another reason why you don't need to be spending 10 grand on a rifle. people do it. They're like, oh, I have the best everything. It's like, okay, well, your rifle only is only as good as your training is. So
Yeah.
if you're not good enough to get to a position where you can shoot, your rifle's nothing. So I would focus more on training, getting good equipment, and then making sure that you can lethally employ that weapon, not just having it be sitting there dormant that you spent 10K on. My rifle is only $2,000 collectively with everything I put on it, $2,000. And like I said, my pistol, like $500, everything I put on it collectively. I'm not spending a lot of money on my weapons because I made sure that I have reliable weapons for a decent price. Because again, it comes down to my training, not just how good my weapon is. Like I'm not going to rock a staccato for my EDC.
No, especially
Like
after watching
that's dumb.
Grand Thumb drop a few on the ground. No, man,
Grantham video, he dropped it, just goes right off.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'll take a skilled dude with basic gear over an unskilled dude with like world class equipment every day.
Exactly. Yeah, man. I'm the same way, dude. And dude, I could talk to you about this for hours, just this topic, man. I love it. But like, dude, honestly, man, and we could totally do a little bit more towards the end. But dude, let's move on a little bit from this topic, and let's talk a little bit more about the company, man. Really,
Yeah.
like the bread and butter of what we're here to talk about, man, and just get into that. So, like you kind of already mentioned, like what everything that you guys are doing, but I have a little bit more detail. Company itself, how originally you got into it, and then just what you're doing now with the company, what you're all about. Your bread and butter.
So, like I said at the start, it was just a chance catch up with a dude that I went to school with, and did that for a bit, and then a few months later, he's like, "Hey, this friend of mine does Cerakote. He wants to sell it. He's moving back to the States. Do you want to get into it with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." While that was happening, we started to, you fantasize about the other cool stuff that you could do without thinking about what it costs necessarily. So in the process of getting that equipment and getting the place set up, the workshop where we do that sort of stuff, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to buy a fiber laser. I don't know how to use a fiber laser, but people are doing cool stuff with it. You can do cool stuff with guns. So we got that. And Luke, the other guy I work with who owns the business, right from the start was like, I want to start making Kydex holsters. How hard could it be? And that was sort of the last thing that we added to it. And it took a while, just, because there isn't, I mean, there is, I guess now, we're the only company in Australia making Kydex holsters currently. There are other people who were, and they're like taking a break for a bit. There's another business that makes, I think, pretty much exclusively mag pouches, but yeah, we're it. And other people were importing stuff from the States. Yeah, so you had guys. A lot of the stuff that people were buying here was, injection molded stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was more expensive. Everything seems to be more expensive in Australia, and here we call it like the Australia tax. It's not that it's more expensive; it's just people in Australia expect to pay more for stuff, so they get charged more for stuff. And as you get like deeper into some of those industries, like we have in order to make holsters and stuff, and you realize some of this stuff doesn't have an Australia tax on it at all. Some businesses just know that Australians expect to pay more, so they charge them more. And I get that. Like, everyone needs to make money. But when you see the margins on some of this stuff, you're just like, you're a dick, dude. Like, why do you shit on your customers like that? Like, our holsters, they're not cheap. I think it costs about the same to import a T-Rex holster into Australia as it does to buy one of ours, and that pricing is kind of deliberate. Nothing against T-Rex holsters. I've got one just over there. They make great stuff. But we wanted something in Australia that we could do, and we didn't want to like screw people on the price. Like Safariland make fantastic holsters, but they are extremely expensive here.
Yeah, I think they're overpriced. I mean, obviously they're a duty style holster. You usually would get them in, and I mean, I think they're too expensive. Like I would
Well,
never do a Safariland holster unless I needed a level 3 retention.
yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
just
one of
no
the
need.
tr-
No
the
need to spend that
the
money on a holster.
one of the drawbacks to making anything injection molded is it's really expensive to make the dies, and you have to sell a few thousand of whatever it is just to break even on the die, and that bumps the costs up massively. Now, like you said, like Spiraland does their level 2 and level 3. It's interesting. So I guess we talk about it. I'll get sidetracked if I talk about this now. Yeah, it's injection molding is expensive. The way that
You totally can if you need
where
to, man.
oh no, I'll forget where I'm at, and then we'll have to come back. But it's
Okay,
about
okay.
the different levels of retention between different companies. Yeah, so even if when we started making holsters, we bought our molds from overseas, from the States, and the molds
Okay.
themselves weren't that expensive. I mean, they weren't cheap. I think they were multi molds, Master Series split molds, but the postage was brutal. Like we'd pay, you know, uh, $75 for a mold or whatever it is, and then $100 in postage to get it here.
Damn. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and then someone
That's a
goes,
lot
"Oh,
of money.
I want
That's a
a
lot of money.
holster for a different thing." Then it becomes expensive again. Like you're either, well, do I wait until like we've got to buy 10 molds so the postage doesn't kill us so much, or do we buy them as we need them? And
Right.
it's just like that. We were so new, and we just weren't bringing enough money to do it. So like, see if we could find a cheaper way to do this. And I saw a video on YouTube of someone making a holster from a 3D printed mold. I was like, I can do that. I have a 3D printer. Let's play with that.
Right.
Which is a whole other rabbit hole to go down.
Right on, man. Right. Well, dude, let's get into it, man. So like 3D printed molds.
Yeah.
What's with them, man? Why are they
So
so good? Why did you start loving them so much? And
well, so like we were talking about training before, and it's about knowing the opportunities and limitations that different training modalities give you. And it's the same with, do you want to use a 3D printed mold versus something that's CNC'd out of Delrin or HDPE or some resin or something like that. If you've got a CNC and you know how to run it, and you can get the material at a decent price, do it that way. Once if you already know how to make holsters, it's you just get you spend less time on it. 3D printed one, you're printing it, which I don't know time wise what it would be compared to CNC'd stuff, but the downside to 3D printing is it's not it's not initially tolerant to the temperatures that you're working with. So I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit. Like we run our Kydex at 190 degrees Celsius. And I don't know, maybe it's like 400 Fahrenheit or something like that. But PLA,
it's something like that.
yeah, PLA and even like PETG start to deform. PLA and PETG are filaments that you can use for 3D printing. If anyone's not like, I can give like a brief overview of 3D printing, but yeah, 3D printing, fused deposition modeling, yeah. They start to deform at like 75, 80 degrees, and you put a 190 degree piece of Kydex on something like that. I've seen guys, you do that and it's going to fuse to it. And you're not going to have a holster and you're not going to have a mold. You're going to have both of them chemically bonded, heat bonded together, and you're not getting them apart. I've seen guys get around that with like Teflon spray, PTFE spray, silicon spray. It's never worked for us. I don't know what the difference is, but to get the molds to not bind to the Kydex, and to be reusable, because if you're spending 20 hours printing something every time you make a holster, that's just not economical. We cover them in aluminium tape, and that seems to that basically solves the problem for us. Problem is you've got to cover everything in aluminium tape, and that's hours as well. Now, the advantage to 3D printing is it's really accessible. Like you don't, especially like I've got a Bamboo P1P behind me. It's my third 3D printer. I started with like a Flash Forge Creator Pro and then a Prusa, and then this thing is the closest we've ever gotten to 3D printers as an appliance. It's not there, but it's crazy fast and so much easier to work with than what we had, what I was using before. Sorry, I forgot. I've lost my train of thought. Talking about 3D printers and making holsters.
Right. So you're using the aluminium tape to cover it and everything like that.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that it keeps form.
That's like sorry. I was talking about like the advantages of 3D printing.
That's wicked cool. Yep.
So the big advantage for us with 3D printing is 3D printing is a form of additive manufacturing. CNC is subtractive manufacturing. You're taking a block of aluminium, whatever it is, and cutting stuff out of it. 3D printing is additive. You're creating it from scratch, and it's not that there's no waste, but there's far less waste than if you were doing something subtractive. And we can make shapes that you couldn't really do easily with CNC. So unfortunately, I don't have one here. You'll be able to see it on like our Instagram, but our holster molds are 3 separate pieces. So we have like a base plate, and then they have the parts of the gun, the mold of the gun, are all interchangeable. So we don't have a holster mold for a left-hand draw Glock and a right-hand draw Glock. We have a base plate for Glock, and then the 2 halves of a left hand and a right hand, and they have little holes inside them, which allow us to put a little dowel in there and then combine the 2 pieces together to fold the holster over, which is where you get something like that, where it's sort of folded around that internal shape. It's not 100%. Ideal, but money-wise, it's allowed us to do a whole bunch of stuff that we just couldn't afford to do otherwise. The downside is we have to design our own molds from scratch.
Right. I mean, even if you were to look at CNC machining, I mean, that's a bunch of end mills you'd have to buy. The whole, not only the machine itself, the coolant and all the other things that go into it, the program too. CNC programs, I mean, they've gotten better over the years, but they're also very hard to run. I was a CNC machinist for a couple of years, and that was how I made a living, was just to operate CNC machines. So I know a little bit about them, but dude, the end mills, the cleanup, and all that stuff. I mean, sure, you're getting a reusable mold, but it's a lot of work that goes into getting just something like that. Whereas the ease and accessibility of the 3D printer, like you said, pros and cons. Get that balance.
Right. So like cleanup, I mean, so when we print, it comes out on that. I bend it like that, and the mold just pops off. This one's needs to be cleaned, but really once you get that off, there's just this little purge line running down there. Once that comes off, it goes back on the machine, and you're ready to go again. Trade-offs, but it allows us to iterate really quickly. Like I'll show you. Well, so just so people understand, when we make our molds, we're 3D scanning them. So we bought like a proper cheap 3D scanner. It's a RevaPoint Pop 3. If anyone's seen like T-Rex's stuff about how they make it, theirs is like an EisenScan 2 or something, which is way more expensive. But the software side of cheap 3D scanners has gotten so good just over the last 2 years, where we haven't upgraded the hardware, but the quality of the scans that we're getting is just night and day from where it was before. And if anyone's seen the 3D scan stuff that T-Rex put up on GrabCAD, granted, they've simplified the models, so it's not like a 100, 200, 300 megabyte file, but the quality that they were getting versus the quality that we get now is just wild. So yeah, we take that 3D scan, I sent it off to a dude. Initially, I was taking those 3D scan mesh files and putting them in CAD software, and creating a mold based on that, which is, I'm not very
Right.
good at it. Like, it worked, but it would take me a week to design the mold, and even then, it wasn't very good. I have a guy that I send it to now who has very expensive piece of software that is purely designed for reverse engineering 3D scans, and the quality of the models that he sends back to us, just a model of the gun, not the holster mold, is absolutely phenomenal. And then I'll take that into CAD, block out, and basically turn that into a mold that allows that will create a holster that allows the pistol to travel in and out without catching it on anything. And then we add a catch point so it retains it, 3D print it, cover the 3D print in aluminium tape, and then we start making holsters with it. And hopefully we got it right the first time. It doesn't always go that way.
Right on. Dude, that's super interesting. And I think that's really cool that you're able to really cut all the stuff that takes all the time, all the money, and be able to get a good holster, produce a good quality usable holster with just 3D printers, the ability just to scan and to reverse engineer those scans, dude. I think it's awesome. Um, and I have to ask because my buddy asked me about this, and I got to ask you for him, have it on the podcast so he can come and listen to it. Flared flared holsters, like you do like flared magwells. He wants to know about flared holsters and what your thoughts are on them and what you've kind of come up with.
All right, give me a second.
He's gonna ask. He's gonna listen to the podcast. And he's gonna know.
So
Right.
I like the idea. I agree with him that flared holsters are on paper a good idea. I didn't come up with the idea. I did. So when I started learning, basically teaching myself to make holster molds and what we wanted our holsters to look like, I shamelessly spent a lot of time looking at T-Rex holsters because they have a really good reputation. I mean, this thing, it looks kind of imprecise because it's incredibly thick Kydex, but it's not. You look on the inside and you can see that it's a very precise holster mold. And they have a flared entrance to the magazine. So, this is where your mounts go on the T-Rex holster, and that has to be raised off where the gun is so that it can travel in and out without getting scuffed up on the screws. But you notice once they push that out, they don't go back in. They stay out for the sweat guard. And you have the same thing on this side of the holster where they have like a little flare. And I was like, that's a cool idea. We should do that. And because we can iterate really quickly with the 3D printer, we started playing with that. Now, this is one of the first holsters that we ever made. It's disgusting. There's like no depth. So this is for a Glock. This will fit like a 17, 19, 22, 31, 34, 45. It's ugly. There's no definition. The sight channel on the thing is absolutely grotesque. And there's no flare. This is not quite what our Glock holsters look like now, but it's pretty close. And it is flared. So you can see on the back there, that's not touching the gun at all. That's just a flare to make it easier to reholster the thing. I'm trying to get an angle where you can sort of see like how it kicks out there. It just makes it same as flared mags, like your friend was talking about. It just makes it a little bit easier. Now, Initially that was fine. Unfortunately, I don't have what they look like now here, but if people go onto like our Instagram or onto our website, they'll start seeing holsters that are a hybrid flare. As I was drawing from a flared holster, I don't have a gun here, but I have a frame from a detonated Glock. So when I draw from the holster, if it's here, it's actually holding my finger up off the trigger guard. And as the gun comes out, some people, if they're not well trained, will hook their finger, which is why so many places will say you can't shoot here with a surfer holster, because people don't depress like that, they depress like that, and the finger goes into the trigger guard. So if you look at our holsters now, this area behind the trigger guard is not flared. It just conforms to the pistol as it is, the grip, the mag release, whatever. It's still flared on this portion here, but not here, because it makes for a smoother draw. So yeah, it was sort of trying to get the best of both worlds if we can. I dig the flared look, man. I like it.
100%.
Can't do it with retention
Right.
hoods,
Dude, I think that's
unfortunately.
awesome. No, I can't imagine that you'd be able to do that. So you had people or studies had basically shown like with it being up and raised as they came out, they were curling their finger.
No, I just
And for
noticed
some reason,
myself
so they were getting a
when I
negligent discharge
it
as they were
wasn't.
pulling out. You noticed
So
that
to be
yourself?
clear, I wasn't curling my finger. I wasn't committing that
Right,
horrible
right,
sin.
right.
I'd, yeah, I'd be very ashamed if I did.
You didn't
But I
envy. You
noticed,
didn't envy.
yeah. So no, God no. But it's different with different guns, right? So this is for a Glock. This is for a 226, and the 226 kicks way more than the Glock does on the flare. And I noticed just drawing that the flare was disturbing my trigger finger from like because you do something often enough. It's not like when something changes, it feels wrong. And that was the change that I noticed, was that it was perturbing my trigger finger during the draw. And I was like, look, I'm confident that I'm okay, but I don't know the competency of everyone who buys a holster off us. So let's, make this trade-off, because it's
100%.
probably more important how you get the firearm out of the holster than how it goes into it.
Right. So you kind of have now best of both worlds, where around the trigger guard that flare's cut, so it's the same. It's just flat finished
Yep.
form to the gun, and then around the front area, that's when you're now getting that flare.
Yeah,
Dude, I
from
think that's
there
awesome. I think that's
all the way up
kind of genius
to.
that came to be.
Well, I mean, it was just like I really like. I'm not good. I'm not good with a blank canvas. If I have a starting point like that, I was like, look, I don't know why why T-Rex made these design decisions, but I can try and redesign the thing and then learn through that process. Like our old holsters had 2 holes here and 2 holes here, and they went all the way through. And I was like, oh, this is going to allow, if I do this, which is not like theirs, they don't have the 2 holes on both sides. It's just on the body side of the OWB holsters. I was like, oh, we can get more bang for our buck as a business, because if people want to change this to an inside the waistband holster, they just have to put hooks here. But it creates this huge, ugly sight channel. And I tried it, and I was just like, I just don't like it. Like, if you want an IWB holster, buy a dedicated IWB holster, and that's why you go from a sight channel that's enormous like that to something that is very sculpted like that, to the point where it's even shielded at the top and that sort of stuff. That's yeah. Pick your battles. Like, you can be average at everything. You go, I want to be good at. No, go ahead.
Right. No, I was gonna say even me with different holsters. Like, I have 3 holsters. I have an inside the waistband that's like a sidecar, and I have an iron side one, and then I have one that's just a quick little metal hooks and stuff, because I have each one dedicated for a different purpose. So I think you're right. Having a holster that can do everything isn't a great holster, like you're about to say.
Yeah. To be fair, the closest I've seen,
trades and a master of none.
100%. But you got to finish the quote, which is a jack of all trades is, what is it? Jack of all trades is better than a master of one. Oh no, I've forgotten the thing. God, I was going to call you out, and I can't even remember the rest of the thing. Jack of all trades is better than one, but often better than a master of one.
So I mean that's true. I mean, if you have just one skill, you should be able to branch out. But I think with holsters, man, like we're retention size, like we're talking how it clips onto your body, we're talking all that comfortability and stuff. So yeah, I definitely think with holsters, like having a good dedicated holster is the way you want to go. For
the closest I've seen
so
to something that
styles.
Yeah, there is a place for the omnivore. I don't think it's in, like EDC sort of stuff. Like if you're running training, and you don't know what's going to come in, what people are going to be bringing in to train with, then an omnivore can be a way that gets you there without having to have a million different holsters on hand. But the caveat is you need to know the quality of those people, because it's not a holster that you can easily draw from safely, I think. The closest I've seen to a holster that solves a lot of those problems, not problems, but like allows you to tick a bunch of boxes without having to buy 5 different holsters, is the Filster Floodlight. It's really clever. It's like I looked at them and played with them. Like I understand what they're doing, but I don't understand like how it works so well at the same time. It's really impressive work that they've done.
Right. Yeah, man. Yeah, cool. So we can move on from the holster portion. So you said you're doing Cerakote. You guys are doing stippling, stuff like that. Talk to me about the stippling, man. So what's up with the stippling? I've seen you guys got some pretty sick designs there. How are you guys doing that? And
so we have a 50-watt fiber laser, and it's really, the process is we only do it on Glocks, and we only do it on black Glocks. Reason for that is the settings for everything else are really hard to dial in on. So like when you're running, so first thing is that we're using a fiber laser which runs at a certain wavelength. If the thing you're lasering can't absorb that wavelength, it's not heat based. If it can't absorb that wavelength, it's not going to have an effect on it whatsoever. And the lighter a color is, like you look at like the Glock 19X, which is like a tan FDE sort of thing, it just doesn't absorb light as well as a black Glock thing does. And different companies have different polymers that react differently. So with the laser, I'm trying to remember. So there's a whole bunch of different things you're controlling at once. You have the power as a percentage of, it's normally done in percentages. So we have a 50-watt laser. So, break that down into a percentage. Then you have how fast is the laser moving. It's a galvo laser. So you have, if anyone's old enough to remember overhead projectors in school, where you have like that sort of box on a wheelie stand that a teacher brings in that like projects light out of it, hits a mirror, and then goes up onto the wall. It's kind of like that with the laser, where it's using a fiber optic cable to send the light down, and then the laser itself doesn't move. In the head of the laser are a whole bunch of little galvo mirrors, and the galvo mirrors move at like incredible speeds to redirect the laser to different parts on this flat surface. So you're controlling how fast the laser moves. And then you've got what is the frequency. So it builds up a charge and then fires one down the line. And the higher the frequency, the more often it fires, which means it'll go faster. But you may be consequence is you're getting less power because it's not having as much time to charge, even though your power percentage is the same. And then you've got like line width, like how far, what is the spacing between your lines and all that. So it's hard because you feel like you're sort of trying to juggle a whole bunch of plates at the same time. And rather than become an expert in that, especially when I'm like trying to learn Cerakote and how to make holsters, design holsters at the same time, I did what a lot of people probably do, is I just went on YouTube and I looked and I found there's a great channel on there called Laser Everything, and they were like showing all the cool stuff that they could do, and they're like, look, sign up to Patreon. We'll give you all our settings, and that's going to give you a great starting point to work with. And so we did that. They had some basic ones there for Glock stippling, and we just tweaked that to get what we want, so that you're vaporizing the Glock polymer without like starting a fire or like wrecking it or anything. And the reason why Glocks are such a great one to start with and so much easier to work with is the boxes that a Glock comes in are the same polymer that the frame is made out of. So you can practice on the box and destroy that without destroying the frame. Yeah, so we use the laser to basically vaporize portions of it to create a pattern.
Right. Dude, that's awesome, man. And honestly, the stippling is intriguing to me because I just started doing my own stippling. I mean, I got a wood burning set, but I'm doing it all by hand with wood burning because that's what people do when they're poor and they can't get theirs sent out to actually get stippled. And I mean, I have an airsoft Glock that I do dry fire with and stuff, and I stippled this one myself just with my hand and everything. I mean, it's not horrible, but dude, actually seeing the way that people get theirs done and the preciseness that you can get with lasers and stuff has always been intriguing. It's always been intriguing to me personally, just because
the laser stuff,
hands you can only get so precise.
Right, and there's a trade-off with the laser. So it comes down to like, why are you stippling? There's, depending on like the person's computer literacy, there's some cool stuff you can do with the laser to get a more 3D or a 2.5D surface when you do your stippling. So it's not just, I'm just, scraping out a little bit at a time with the laser as I go across it. You sort of like, you get depth to it and variable depth. But it's a lot more time. It's a lot more work to set up. Laser, if you're new to it, is a great way to make cool looking stippling. What you're doing with like a soldering iron and different tips and stuff is a lot more work, at least for the individual. But I think if you're doing it to get a better grip on the firearm, it's better. It'll last longer, and those like weird heat imperfections from where you've left it on a little bit too long or something like that, those increase the grip.
Right. And that's something that you're right too with the trade-off. And that's something that I found. I've stippled a couple guns now, and I do it for grip, just based off the fact that I grip my pistols super high, and especially with Glocks, if they're not stippled or they don't have a good grip, they will slip out of my hand, and I'll cause malfunctions because of the slide stop or the slide catch. It makes it so I'm pushing up on it because my hands are so big that it will cause malfunctions. And I bought a CAGWorks slide release, and I put that on my PSA Dagger. My PSA Dagger frame is super thin. It's thinner than the Glock 19. And because it's thinner, my hands started to slip out of it. So I got into stippling to stipple that. And I stippled that, and it pretty much solved my problem just because I'm actually getting a good grip on it. But if I were to do like a design or something like that, I wouldn't. You're right. Like I wouldn't be getting a better grip. I just be getting a cooler design.
And so I gotta say, like,
trade-off. I think that's also something that a lot of people don't consider.
I'm part of a I think it's a Facebook group of guys like I think it's like DIY stippling or something like that, and some of the work that those guys like post up in there, like if you told me it was done by a laser, I would believe you. Like the work that these guys can do by hand, people who do it professionally, it's really exceptional. Yeah, like there's no shortage of like really ugly guns that people have tried to like stipple themselves and just fucking wrecked. But if you want to have a crack at it yourself, like the little thin awesome. If you don't, there's awesome people out there. Oh yeah, well, and the smell and everything, and I'd have so many burn marks on my hand by the time I finished it.
You stand up afterwards and you're like, oh.
Yeah, like even
I did I did my buddies the other night. That one on my thumb. I don't even know how I got it. I put it down and it fell on my thumb or something.
But yeah, like, and Glock plastic has a real specific smell when it burns.
Yeah, it does. It's almost like you can't even describe it, but you feel high afterwards because of the fumes. You stand up and you have a headache, and you're like,
it's unpleasant.
That's rough. And obviously, like I'm saying it like I know what being high is like. I don't, but I've heard from people that it's like it really messes up your brain. Like you stand up and you're like, whoa, like you're sniffing markers or something. It's bad. It's bad. But he has his Glock. He also has his micro dagger, and he needed that stipple. But it's his carry gun. So the nice thing about doing it with your hands is being able to measure how rough you want it. If you want a good stipple, you want to do something like a snake scan. You want to do something like a sprinkle where there's opposing directions, and you want to make it inconsistent. Like you're saying, the longer you leave it on there, and you want to be able to do that. And I did that with his, and it was a little too rough. So we took a little bit of sandpaper to sand it down just a tad, and he got it perfect. And I also do it where I'm stippling little gas pedals onto the frame itself as well, just to be able to get a little bit more grip with your thumbs. And for a micro handgun that he has, or a subcompact, he loves it just because you're able to dial down exactly what you want the feel to be.
Yeah, and you can buy different tips now
ones,
as well.
Yep. Yeah, I have really. I went and I bought like a pack of like 24 different types of tips and just experimenting with all of them. And the one that I like the most is almost like a waffle tip, but it's all in one direction. So it's almost like little lines. But if you rotate it and do one side and then flip it and do another, it makes like a little hex pattern, so little hex tiles. I've done that on my PSA dagger. I did that on his, and we both love that texture, and it looks cool too without making it so hard to do that it takes hours and hours and hours. But it looked really cool for a simple, just quick little stippling. There's one that I did see where someone just took the thinnest tip, like the thinnest needle tip, and just poked little needle holes, and that one made me want to puke. It was so atrocious. Like your gun has like a bunch of like why did you poke a bunch of holes in your gun? It looks so bad.
It's weird. It's like it looks like something familiar, but I can never the closest I get is like if you did if you zoomed in on like a face that was full of like pimples and blackheads with like a microscope. That's what a bad stippling job looks like, and you're just like, oh, this is gross. I can't look at it.
Yep. Or like one of those what are they? They're like little like coral stones that you find, like where there's like a bunch of different imperfect holes on it, where it looks so bad, and like you pick it up and you're like, what the fuck is this? It can't feel good either. So like, why did you stipple it? Because the least you get the least amount of grip by poking holes, because it's just shallow little channels. You're not getting a good grip. You're not raising any material. You're pushing material in, so you're not getting any grip by doing that.
Well, it's tricky, right? Because it's like a tire. You have like with tires you have like slicks, and then at the other end you have like muds, and slicks give you the most traction, the most friction, because you have the most contact. But as soon as you introduce moisture, slicks are suddenly like the worst thing you can have in your car. And it's the same with like stippling, I assume, because your hands sweat, and it's not like a perfectly flat hard surface. You want some unexpected texture so that that stuff has somewhere to go. And when the gun not only recoils but muzzle flips, it's moving in multiple directions at the same time, and you want to try and give the grip as many opportunities to mess up your hands as possible. I mean, you see dudes with like super aggressive grips, and they have tape on their hands after they shoot.
Yeah. And that's like Glock knuckle, that's one of the things where people end up cutting underneath their frames and stuff to make it so it actually doesn't end up doing that to them. But like you're saying with like sweating and stuff, if you have an EDC gun that's inside your waistband, not only is that gun going to be inside of all that moisture that you're sweating, but you're also more than likely going to have sweaty hands when you go and you grab it because you're nervous or something's going to happen. If you don't have good stippling and this things, your hands are slippery, or if you're shooting for long periods of time. Man, I don't know about you, but being in the military, having to go out to the ranges and shoot, it's not cold. It is hot, and you're out there for hours, and you're shooting, and you're losing grip because it's sweaty. It's range day. Okay, cool. We're there for 8 hours.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like over there, but a lot of the... Actually, no, I know enough to know that the American bases are pretty much the same as ours. They're always on like the worst possible land they could have bought, and it's like they do it on purpose. And some of the places we have, like it's like 4 seasons in one day. Like it could be hot, and then it'll be piercing down rain and cold, like, one day's hot and humid and the next day's just like
100%.
cold and overcast and people are getting hypothermia, and it's got to work under all conditions.
Right. And that's something that people just overlook whenever they do anything with their firearms. And you can see it. Some people, obviously, have it dialed in, but then there is that handful of people that they just over there.
Well,
they just.
It's like you were talking about before, man, where you have, there's the flat range, the competition, and then there's like all the other stuff that goes on around it. If like your experience of shooting a gun under stress is, I drove to the range, put on my holster and just hung around talking shit until it was my time to shoot the competition, and then I was done and I went home, like, you're not going to be pre-fatigue necessarily. You're not going to have like maybe like a little niggling injury. Your hands aren't going to be covered in like a week of caked dirt along with like your firearm. At a range, you generally, for competition, you're shooting under the most ideal possible conditions, and getting yourself to the point where you learn those lessons. You got to eat a lot of shit, and most people, understandably, don't want to do it. Yeah. But it actually comes full circle from what we were talking about before, where like military guys should go to high-level competition shooters and say, hey, give me a shortcut to all the important shit that you've learned. And it can go the other way, where those people come back to someone and go, give me the shortcut to all the stuff you've learned about dealing with stress, dealing with imperfect conditions and imperfect equipment and like handicaps and all of that sort of stuff, so that they can benefit from those lessons as well, I guess.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, and like you're saying, everything really comes full circle, dude. But we're getting to the point where it's almost been an hour and a half here coming up, man. We'll start to wrap it up a little bit, but I want to ask, is there anything that you are looking forward to doing with the company in the future, or anything like that, like future plans, or just kind of what to expect from Airborne Customs?
At the moment, look, we just want to grow it. We're still, we've been around for a couple of years at this point, but we've spent a lot of that time figuring out how to do stuff, and most of that is through figuring out how not to do stuff. So at the moment, it's just like capitalizing on the lessons that we've learned, and really, holster-wise, I want to make more holsters for more guns, like combinations and all that sort of stuff. So more people have the opportunity, 100%. If they want to buy a really good Australian holster. I would like us to get better at what we do already, and add a few new things, like this is like the last thing we've done, which is like a tourniquet holster, which I'm like super proud of, just because it's basically, if you stage it correctly, and anyone in the military probably stages their tourniquet this way, it's completely protects the Velcro from like getting full of debris, unlike an elastic thing or something like that. And it's just cool, 100%. Like being able to go, oh, I've got a problem, can I come up with a solution, and just doing that sort of stuff. So make some new stuff, get better at the stuff we're doing now, and hopefully sell a bit more of it so we can like chill out and do that sort of stuff. And then long term, who knows, man? It'd be good to get some government contracts, but that's a whole headache in and of itself in Australia 100%. At the moment.
Right. But I'll say right now, though, with those tourniquet cases or the holders, right? I'm in need for those. So 100%. Have you dropped those on your website yet, or is it?
No, so they're going to be on the new website. Oh, what I will say is,
okay.
There's a guy in Colorado who's super helpful to me in like once he saw the trash that I was making, he's like, hey dude, let me help you out here, and has been super helpful. It's a holster making company out of Colorado called Slim Fit Holsters. I'm gonna send him the mold to make these things, and hopefully he'll be doing them at some point, assuming he likes it as much as I do, and then you guys have someone local that you can spend your money with, rather than, effectively buying the product twice to get it to the States from us.
Right. Okay. Yeah, man, because I was going to say, those are a must, especially for me. I carry tourniquets on my kit every day. And like you're saying, the Velcro gets all torn up, which is something that people that don't carry tourniquets every day don't think about. Velcro's torn up, and the elastic on it can get deteriorated the more you get it dirty and everything on it. And it just becomes this whole thing where you want to make sure that your tourniquet that's supposed to save your life is being kept in good condition. So, dude, definitely interested in those things. On top of that, obviously, sending traffic over to your guys' website is one of the whole reasons why we're doing this, but also just to get to know you as well and what Airborne Customs is, people behind it as well.
No, I've really enjoyed it, man.
You got anything else to add?
Dude, hopefully
bro.
our new website will be. I'm really hoping it's going to be done by the end of the week. But these things have a way of dragging out. When you solve one problem, you find other ones. But hopefully this week. Other thing, there's a couple of people I wanted to thank. I already thanked James at Slim Fit Holsters. If you're in States, they make awesome stuff. Check them out, and hopefully those tourniquet holsters will be there in a bit. The other one, because we 3D scan stuff, but we don't have everything we need to 3D scan. There's a dude, I think it's 139 Tactical out of Brazil, who sells phenomenal 3D scans of firearms on, I think it's Colts 3D. So yeah, if you want to get some training aids that you can 3D print or have a crack at making your own stuff, check out 139 Tactical on Colts 3D. Otherwise, you can check out our website, airbornecustoms.com.au. I think it's going to be when the new one comes out.
100%. Yeah, dude, 100%. And your socials, like your Instagram, stuff like that.
We're on Instagram, Facebook.
Thing, right? Airborne Customs.
Yeah, like if you put in, like, Airborne Customs is a bit of a weird name. So if you put it in search terms, hopefully it'll come up with us. You'll see, like, some wings and a parachute on there. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know exactly what they are off the top of our head. But
right. It popped up when I searched it, so if you guys search up that or something along that, you will find it. As he said, look for their emblem or their symbol or something like that, because I mean they've got a lot of good stuff on their website. And as he said, by the time this episode drops, hopefully the new website will be out or close to it. Because again, we got to go through the whole process of editing the whole thing and making it a good listening experience for all you guys and everything like that. But,
yeah. Well, speaking of editing, if there's some nerds out there,
mentioned as well. Yeah.
If there's some nerds out there that are into, just like me, like how do you make stuff, we're working on releasing like a series of videos showing how we make a holster from start to finish. So like 3D scanning to design to printing to making and all that sort of stuff. I don't know when that's going to happen, but we've filmed it all. We're just figuring out how to do it in a way that social media will like.
Right. Makes sense. That sounds awesome, man. I really can't wait for that to drop. Definitely let me know when that happens. I will be one of the first people watching that.
Awesome.
But all right, yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. Guys, I want to thank you so much for listening, and Sam, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure being able to do this podcast, this interview with you, man. Had a great time, and
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Coming on again, because
yeah,
dude,
loved
100%, bro. So yeah, you guys check out his Instagram, check out the website, and all that good stuff. And if you guys are needing any holsters, you guys know where to look. But anyway, yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Make sure you guys follow the channel here on Spotify, follow it on YouTube and the Instagram as well. And I will see you guys next time. Remember, we are one nation. Hold the line. Peace.